I don't care a damn for the invention. The dimes are what I am after." These words came from Isaac Merritt Singer, the founder of one of America's first global empires. His sewing machine sits in homes across 180 countries. His brand accounts for more than 1 in 3 consumer sewing machines sold worldwide. For over 170 years, the Singer name has meant reliability, domesticity, and the honest work of making things by hand. But before any of that, Isaac Singer was a runaway. His parents divorced when he was 10. He left school at 11. He drifted through acting troupes, machine shops, and failed ventures for 2 decades. He married young, abandoned his wife, and started collecting secret families like debts he never intended to pay. By his late 30s, he was broke, desperate, and dragging a failed invention through Boston, looking for anyone willing to believe in him. What happened next would make him one of the wealthiest men in America and one of the most scandalous. 24 children with at least 5 women, a bigamy arrest, abuse allegations, a flight to Europe to escape the wreckage of his own making. He got the dimes, but the cost was everything else. Isaac Merritt Singer was born on October 27, 1811, in Pittstown, New York. Singer is one of the most recognized household names in history. Today, the brand operates in more than 180 countries. It accounts for more than 1 out of every 3 consumer sewing machines sold worldwide. For over 170 years, the Singer sewing machine has been a symbol of domestic progress, a prized centerpiece in millions of homes, the machine that changed how the world dressed itself. But the man who built this empire, he grew up in a fractured, lower-class household. His parents divorced when he was 10 years old. He left school at 11. He ran away from home to chase theatrical dreams that never materialized. By his late 30s, he was still hustling, still broke, still dragging a failed carving machine from shop to shop, looking for someone, anyone, to believe in him. Here is what most people do not know. The beloved sewing machine in your grandmother's home was invented by a man whose personal life was so scandalous, so chaotic, and so destructive that his own business partner considered him a threat to the company's survival. Isaac Merritt Singer fathered at least 24 children with at least 5 different women. He was arrested for bigamy. He was accused of abuse. And when the walls finally closed in, he fled America entirely. He never came back. This is the story of how a runaway boy built one of America's first global brands, and how his secret life nearly destroyed everything. Isaac Merritt Singer was born on October 27, 1811, in Pittstown, New York, a small rural community in Rensselaer County nestled along the Hoosick River. His father, Adam Singer, originally Reisinger, was a German immigrant who worked as a millwright and farmer, building and repairing the mills that ground grain for local communities. His mother, Ruth Benson Singer, was Lutheran and bore 8 children into a household that struggled for stability from the very start. There was no wealth waiting for Isaac, no security, no inheritance. Adam's work as a millwright was honest labor, but it never lifted the family out of lower-class hardship. The household was marked by tension that would soon erupt into something worse, something that would shape the boy Isaac would become. In 1821, when Isaac was just 10 years old, his mother Ruth filed for divorce from Adam. In early 19th century America, divorce was rare. It was scandalous. It meant the complete fracturing of a family unit in a society that offered few paths forward for broken homes. For a woman to initiate divorce proceedings meant that something had gone deeply, irreconcilably wrong. The family shattered. Isaac was uprooted from Oswego and sent to live with an older brother in Rochester. He left school at 11, a boy cast out from his home, learning too early what it felt like to watch a family collapse from the inside. The domestic stability that most children took for granted was something Isaac never knew. That knowledge would haunt his later conduct in ways no one could have predicted. But even in hardship, Isaac was different. He was restless, ambitious, consumed by a need for attention that went beyond ordinary childhood longing. He craved applause. He wanted to be seen. As a teenager, he ran away from home entirely, taking odd jobs wherever he could find them, and eventually joining traveling theater troupes that roamed through upstate New York and beyond. The stage called to him, the lights, the crowds, the moment when every eye in the room turned toward him, and him alone. This theatrical streak never left him. Years later, it would become his greatest weapon in building an empire. But first, it would lead him down paths that had nothing to do with sewing. The spark that would ultimately define Isaac's life was not fabric, it was machinery. As a young man, Isaac worked as a mechanic and cabinet maker, learning the practical skills of working with wood and metal. Later, at a plant in Fredericksburg, Ohio, he encountered something that captured his imagination completely: the machines that carved wooden type for printers. He watched the gears turn with precision, the parts interlock in perfect sequence, the mechanism repeat its motion over and over without error. Something clicked in his mind, a recognition that would eventually change domestic life across the globe. Isaac did not fall in love with sewing. He fell in love with making moving parts behave. He saw the gap between what machines could do and what they were actually doing in practice, and he wanted to close that gap. His formal education ended early. He attended school briefly in Oswego, then in Rochester, until about 1828. By 19, he had traded the classroom for the machine shop, apprenticing as a machinist and learning the craft that would eventually make him famous. Everything he would learn from that point forward, he would learn with his hands. Isaac absorbed the discipline of fabrication, working metal, shaping wood, understanding how mechanisms could be made to run smoothly. He developed an instinct for diagnosing what was broken in a machine and how to fix it. This was not theoretical engineering taught from textbooks. This was problem-solving under pressure, learned through trial and error in workshops that had no patience for failure. But Isaac was never content to work for someone else. The ambition that had driven him onto the stage also drove him toward independence. In 1839, at 28 years old, Isaac patented a rock drilling machine and sold the patent for $2,000. That was real money in 1839, not enough to make him secure for life, but enough to make him dangerous. He took the cash, founded a theatrical troupe called the Merritt Players, and chased both applause and fortune at the same time. The actor and the inventor lived side by side in the same restless man. By then, Isaac was already married, already a father, already straying. In 1830, at just 19 years old, Isaac had married Catherine Maria Haley. She was 15, barely more than a child herself. They had 2 children together, but the marriage was unstable almost from the beginning. Isaac's restlessness, his theatrical ambitions, his constant need to be somewhere else, doing something else, none of it made for a stable home life. A few years later, while traveling with his acting company, Isaac met Mary Ann Sponsler. She was younger, she was available, and she would become the central figure in the scandal that would later consume everything Isaac built. Mary Ann would live publicly as Mrs. Singer for years, bearing many of his children, believing, or perhaps pretending to believe, that she was his only wife. She would eventually have him arrested for bigamy, but all of that was still years away. The affair began before the sewing machine even existed. Isaac's double life started long before his empire did. His life before sewing was chaos. Machine work mixed with theatrical ambition. Children he could not adequately support. obligations he did not honor, schemes that never quite paid off the way he imagined they would. He was not patiently ascending a ladder of success. He was lunging from one venture to the next, always chasing something just out of reach. By his late 30s, Isaac had patented a second machine, a metal and wood carving device, in 1849. When he moved to Boston in 1850, it was this carving machine he was trying to promote, dragging it from workshop to workshop in search of backing. He had no idea he was about to stumble into history. In June 1850, Isaac Merritt Singer arrived in Boston, hauling his carving machine from shop to shop, looking for anyone willing to fund his next scheme. He rented workspace in the shop of a machinist named Orson C. Phelps, hoping to find a buyer or an investor for his invention. Phelps was not interested in carving machines. He was busy with a different problem entirely: repairing Lero and Blodgett sewing machines. These early sewing machines were clumsy, unreliable devices that frustrated everyone who tried to use them. Thread tangled constantly, needles snapped under pressure, fabric jammed in the mechanism. The machines that were supposed to save labor created new frustrations instead. Phelps looked at Isaac, this restless, ambitious machinist who had already patented 2 inventions, and issued a challenge. If Singer could build a truly practical sewing machine, one that actually worked the way it was supposed to, he would make more money in a year than in 50 years of promoting his carving machine. Isaac listened carefully. Then he pivoted hard. He found a believer in George Zieber, a financier willing to take a risk on an unproven idea. On September 18, 1850, Zieber signed an agreement that would launch an empire. He would provide the money, Singer would supply the inventive genius, and Phelps would contribute mechanical skill. Zieber advanced small sums to fund experiments. The first was just $40. Zieber was the man who believed when no one else did. He would later regret that belief deeply. But the partnership that would truly matter came in June 1851, when Isaac joined forces with Edward Cabot Clark, a lawyer with something Isaac desperately lacked: discipline, legal acumen, and strategic vision. Clark saw the potential in Singer's machine, but he also saw the chaos in Singer's character. He would spend the next decade building systems to contain both. I.M. Singer and Company was born. The company would change domestic life forever. Singer's improved sewing machine was patented on August 12, 1851, as U.S. patent number 8294. The machine featured a horizontal table to support the fabric, an overhanging arm to allow continuous sewing, a vertical needle that moved up and down rather than side to side, a presser foot to hold fabric steady, improved shuttle motion, and better thread control. It was not the first sewing machine ever invented, but it was the first one that actually worked reliably, repeatedly, at scale. The problem with early sewing machines was simple. They did not work well enough to matter. Even Elias Howe's important 1846 machine, which held key patents that would later haunt Singer, could not deliver what homes and factories actually needed. The technical problems were maddening: poor shuttle thread tension that caused stitches to loosen or break, awkward cloth handling that required constant repositioning, designs that demanded the operator stop every few seconds to untangle thread or reset fabric, machines that promised to save hours of labor created new headaches instead. Isaac saw exactly what was broken in these designs, and he became obsessed with fixing it. According to historical accounts, Singer designed and built his improved model in just 11 days. 11 days. He worked 18 to 20 hours a day, eating one meal a day, driving toward a workable prototype, while the money from Zieber nearly ran out. Whether every detail of this legend is accurate or not, the core fact remains undeniable. The turnaround from seeing a broken machine to building a dramatically better one was shockingly fast. Isaac was not patient. He was possessed. His machine assembled a working configuration that had eluded every other inventor in the field. Horizontal table to support the fabric flat, overhanging arm to allow the operator to sew continuously without repositioning, vertical needle moving up and down with precision, a presser foot to hold fabric steady while the needle pierced it, an improved shuttle that rested for an instant, just long enough to form a tight, secure stitch, better thread control to eliminate the tangling that plagued every earlier design, in his own patent language, improvements in the machine for sewing seams in cloth and other substances. He did not invent every element from scratch, but he combined existing ideas into something that finally actually worked. 900 stitches per minute. That was the number that changed everything. A skilled seamstress working simple seams by hand could manage about 40 stitches per minute. Singer's machine moved at a speed no human hand could possibly match. The first time a crowd watched the machine run, the needle plunging through fabric, the thread pulling tight, the cloth gliding smooth beneath the presser foot. They were not seeing a gadget. They were not seeing an incremental improvement. They were seeing the end of hand stitching as the only option for clothing a family. The machine did not just work, it dominated. But Isaac Singer understood something that his competitors never grasped. People need to see to believe. And staging a spectacle was what Isaac did best. He took the skills he had learned on the stage and applied them to selling machines. He organized public demonstrations at county fairs and circuses, crooning "The Song of the Shirt," a popular ballad about the misery of seamstresses, while a woman operated the machine beside him. He placed female demonstrators in Broadway showroom windows, sewing in full view of passing crowds, turning the mundane act of stitching into public theater. He made the machine irresistible by making it visible. His partner, Edward Clark, built the systems behind the spectacle, trade-in programs that let customers exchange old machines for new ones, repair mechanics stationed in cities across the country, service networks that ensured buyers would not be abandoned after purchase, dedicated agencies that trained salespeople in the art of demonstration. And in 1856, Clark pioneered something revolutionary: installment purchasing. The domestic sewing machine cost about $130, more than most working families could pay at once. But Clark offered weekly payments of $2 to $10. Suddenly, the machine that promised to transform domestic life was within reach of the people whose domestic lives needed transforming most. In 1855, Singer's company won first prize at the Paris World's Fair. That same year, it became the largest-selling sewing machine brand internationally. The validation was global, official, and impossible to ignore. By the mid-1850s, Isaac Merritt Singer had built a working empire. But while the company grew stronger with each passing year, the cracks in his personal life were spreading wider. Behind the Broadway showrooms and Paris prizes, a darker story was waiting to explode. Isaac reached middle age without becoming the great actor he had dreamed of being as a boy. His carving machine never made him rich. His first patent, the rock drilling machine from 1839, gave him a brief taste of success that faded quickly. He arrived in Boston in 1850, nearly 40 years old, with little to show for decades of striving. The sewing machine changed everything, but success brought new enemies. Then came the patent war. Elias Howe held earlier patents on key sewing machine mechanisms, patents that Singer's machine clearly utilized. Howe sued. The case dragged through the courts for years, threatening to destroy the company before it could truly flourish. In 1854, Howe won. Singer was forced to pay $28,000 in settlement of past claims and $10 in royalty on every single machine sold going forward. The legal fees and royalties threatened to strangle the young company before it could breathe. The so-called sewing machine war dragged multiple manufacturers into court until 1856, when a lawyer named Orlando B. Potter proposed a solution: the sewing machine combination. The major patent holders would pool their patents and share royalties rather than destroy each other through endless litigation. It became the first great patent pool in American industrial history. Singer survived, but the battle left scars. Isaac Singer was not easy to work with. George Zieber, the financier who had believed in him when no one else would, later claimed he had been manipulated out of his share of the company for just $6,000 while he was sick in bed, too weak to resist. Zieber's account includes a chilling alleged quote from Singer. "The doctor thinks you won't get over your sickness. Don't you want to give up your interest in the business altogether?" Whether precisely accurate or not, the sentiment captures something true about Isaac's character. There was ruthlessness coiled inside his genius. Barzillai Ransom, another early investor who had provided crucial backing, later called Singer a dictator. The company did not rise through harmony and collaboration. It rose despite its founders' treatment of the people who helped build it. Then came the collapse of everything Isaac had tried to keep hidden. By 1860, Isaac Singer had fathered approximately 20 children by 4 different women, and more were coming. His overlapping households, carefully kept separate for years, were finally colliding. Mary Ann Sponsler, the woman who had lived publicly as Mrs. Singer for more than a decade, discovered the truth about his other families. She had him arrested for bigamy. In 1861, she took him to court again, this time accusing him of physically abusing her and their daughter Valetti. The exact legal language varies by source, but the scandal itself was unmistakable. Newspaper headlines screamed the details. Court summons arrived at his door. The secret life Isaac had maintained for decades was finally, catastrophically exposed. Picture what it looked like. A man with at least 3 separate households in the same city, each woman believing or pretending to believe that she was the legitimate wife. Children whose names he struggled to keep straight, aliases and cover stories he could no longer track. Court officers arriving with papers demanding his appearance. Journalists gathering information for stories that would humiliate him publicly. And behind all of it, a factory churning out machines designed to sit in respectable parlors, operated by respectable women, stitching respectable clothes for respectable families. The contrast was grotesque. Edward Clark, the partner who had built the business systems that made Singer successful, who had created the installment plans and service networks and showroom strategies, saw Isaac as a catastrophic reputational liability. The beloved domestic brand, symbol of household virtue, was being dragged into the gutter by its own founder. Isaac Singer's response was not redemption, it was retreat. He stepped away from day-to-day control of the company. He gathered his latest partner, Mary McGonigal, an employee who had become his mistress and was now the mother of more of his children, and fled to Europe. He would never return to live in America again. The company survived because Edward Clark stayed behind to run it. The brand endured because Isaac Singer had the wisdom, or perhaps simply the instinct for self-preservation, to leave. Isaac Merritt Singer had built an empire. Then he had nearly burned it down. Now, from exile in Europe, he would watch the machine he created conquer the world without him. By 1860, Singer was producing 13,000 machines a year, making it the largest sewing machine producer in the world. To truly grasp how fast things accelerated, consider the timeline. In 1851, Isaac Singer was dragging a failed carving machine through Boston workshops, desperate to find anyone who would believe in him. By 1860, his company was the largest sewing machine producer on Earth. By 1870, production had reached 127,000 machines annually. In a single decade, output had grown nearly tenfold. The machine that started with $40 in backing and an 11-day prototype was now a global industrial force producing at a scale that dwarfed every competitor. New products expanded the empire year after year. In 1858, the lightweight domestic grasshopper model made the machine more accessible and affordable for home use. In 1865, the new family machine became a bestseller, establishing Singer as the default choice for households across America and Europe. In 1889, the company introduced the first practical electric sewing machine, pushing the brand into the modern era of mechanized domestic life. By 1890, Singer's official company history claims they held 90% of global market share. Even allowing for promotional exaggeration, the dominance was staggering. Singer was not merely the biggest sewing machine company in the world. For most of the world, Singer was the sewing machine. The company became the first American firm to produce and market extensively in Europe, establishing manufacturing plants and distribution networks across multiple continents. The brand's reach was genuinely global, not as a marketing slogan, but as a documented business reality that reshaped international commerce. Edward Clark Systems had transformed Singer from a product company into a complete consumer experience. Installment purchasing that made expensive machines affordable, trade-in programs that encouraged upgrading, service networks that ensured no customer would be abandoned after purchase, dedicated showrooms where trained demonstrators taught women how to use their new machines, a complete ecosystem of support that built customer loyalty for generations. Clark understood that selling a sewing machine meant selling confidence. Confidence that the machine would work as promised, that someone would teach you to use it properly, that someone would repair it if anything went wrong, and that you could afford it even if you did not have the cash immediately available. That infrastructure became the template for modern consumer retail, copied by industries far beyond sewing. Isaac Merritt Singer did not live to see all of this growth. He spent his final years in European luxury, far from the factories and showrooms, far from the scandal that had driven him across the Atlantic. In 1863, Singer and Clark reorganized the company as the Singer Manufacturing Company. Singer retired officially to England, settling eventually at an extravagant estate in Paynton, Devon, a mansion later known as Oldway that cost him a fortune to build and maintain. He lived as a semi-retired industrial aristocrat, surrounded by wealth built on the domestic labor of millions of women he would never meet and never know. He had once said, with characteristic bluntness, "I don't care a damn for the invention. The dimes are what I am after." He got the dimes. On July 23, 1875, Isaac Merritt Singer died in Devon, England. He was 63 years old. His estate was valued at approximately $13 to $14 million, a staggering fortune that made him one of the wealthiest men of his era. His will became a public sensation because of the sheer number of children and disputed relationships it revealed to a fascinated world. At least 24 children with at least 5 different women. Secret families exposed, competing claims filed, the final accounting of a hidden life laid bare for everyone to see. The Singer brand outlived its founder by more than 150 years. The company remained a dominant global force throughout the entire 20th century, surviving world wars and economic depressions and technological revolutions. Today, Singer is part of SVP Worldwide, owned by Platinum Equity. operating in more than 180 countries around the world. The brand still accounts for more than 1 in every 3 consumer sewing machines sold worldwide. The Singer sewing machine remains a symbol of domestic craft, still sitting in homes across the globe, still stitching fabric, still carrying a name that most people associate with reliability and tradition and the honest work of making things by hand. From a runaway boy whose parents divorced when he was 10, from a drifting actor who could never find the audience he craved, from a broke machinist hauling a failed invention through Boston workshops, begging someone to believe in him, Isaac Merritt Singer built one of America's first global empires and lived a personal life so dark, so chaotic, and so destructive that his own partner feared for the company's survival. The machine endured. The man behind it left a legacy far more complicated than any sewing pattern could ever capture. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to subscribe, and until the next one.